What if I told you that one of the coolest movie cars ever, the Bandit Trans Am, was almost nothing more than a stroke of marketing genius? Imagine a car so iconic, it could turn heads and capture hearts, but its journey from movie magic to automotive legend is nothing short of extraordinary. But what makes this car worth more than $1 million today? The answers might just blow your mind. Suppose you're watching TV in the late 70s, and suddenly you find yourself watching a movie in which the main character drives a black car with the emblem in the form of a phoenix and gold on the hood. This wasn't just any car, but the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, which was popularly associated with the Bandit car. The Trans Am has had many different looks and designs over the course of its nearly 35-year history, but one image remains in the minds of auto enthusiasts forever: the vehicle with the iconic screaming chicken emblem, which looks fantastic against a black background. Most people quickly think of Burt Reynolds driving the car with screeching tires when they hear the name Trans Am. The Bandit Trans Am isn't just a car, it's a legend, and one that came straight from the silver screen. It's one of the vivid examples of how movie creation can turn into a branding marvel. At a time when American cars were being weighed down by emission standards and were often characterized as slow and unexciting, the Trans Am rose above the rest. It was a shining star in a period referred to as the Malaise era, which was the worst time for the American auto industry. But let's dive into the story behind Smokey and the Bandit. This classic film was crafted by Hal Needham, a guy who had spent years performing daring stunts in Hollywood before trying his hand at directing. He wasn't just a director, he was also Burt Reynolds' longtime roommate. Imagine that, a stuntman turned director who had spent over a decade living in Reynolds' pool house, coming up with a movie script inspired by their shared love for Coors beer. Back then, Coors was brewed in Colorado and wasn't available east of the Mississippi River, which gave them the seed for their story about a high-stakes bootlegging operation. While the plot initially revolved around beer smuggling, it gradually evolved into the storyline that made it to the big screen. The film's development was fueled by the cases of Coors beer delivered to the set of another Reynolds film, Gator, which they were filming in Atlanta. Now, on to the Pontiac connection. The idea of featuring the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am came about somewhat by chance. Needham had seen pictures of the Trans Am in a magazine and was struck by the idea of having Reynolds drive one in the film, with the twist being that they'd wrecked several of them on camera. But the late Burt Reynolds might have been eastbound and down in a different ride if it hadn't been for a single photograph in a brochure. This photograph featured a Pontiac Trans Am LE, and it was this very image that sparked a crucial decision for Reynolds and director Hal Needham. When they saw the car's sleek look and fierce stance, they knew it was the perfect companion for Bandit's adventures. Excited by the idea, they reached out to Pontiac, hoping to use that exact car for the film. Pontiac, however, had other plans and declined to lend them that specific vehicle. But Pontiac wasn't about to leave them high and dry. Instead, they agreed to build 5 brand new Trans Am LE models specifically for the movie. Now, the backstory of the car is that the brochure is a tale in itself. It started as a 1976 model and was part of GM's West Coast press fleet. This specific car had a 455 V8 engine, 4-speed manual transmission, and T-tops. There were only 110 LE Trans Ams made with this option. One has to laugh and imagine this incredible car sitting in a brochure as a mere picture if it was not for the part it played in turning Smokey and the Bandit into the legendary movie it is today. But it became a problem for Pontiac. They were preparing for the sales brochure of the 1977 model, and for that, they wanted a new LE Trans Am. But the fact was that the production of 1977 models had not even begun. Therefore, Pontiac decided to come up with a strategy that would help him to save the day. They chose to prank. What they did was swap the exterior of a 1976 Trans Am with a 1977 front end. Pontiac then shipped a number of new parts, which included a 1977 hood, bumper, headlights, wheels, and decals to John Callies and his workers at Van Nuys plant in California. Some grease and a few gadget adjustments later, they managed to turn the 76 into a 77 model just in time for the photo session. After the flashes of the camera, the front end was changed back to the 1977, and the car was brought back to its 1976 form. The car then went through the motions of cruising around GM storage facilities until January of 1977, when it was finally sold to a dealer of Pontiac in California. The price tag? A little over $7,400, or $31,895 in today's money if we take inflation into account. Fast forward to the real 77 models available to buyers. These were named special editions and came with some cool features. They had the iconic T-tops, which were removable roof panels, thanks to a collaboration with Hearst. Under the hood, you have the option of one of two beefy 400 cubic inch V8 engines. Now, let's talk about how these cars looked and performed. They were all black, flaunting a new gold 6.6-liter sticker on the hood scoop, gold snowflake rims, and gold accents inside. The base engine churned out 180 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. If you opted for the W72 package, you'd get an extra 20 horsepower. While these numbers might seem tame by today's standards, back then they were the best Detroit could deliver amidst tough anti-pollution regulations. For the collectors, the rarest gem was the Y81 package, with a slick top and a 4-speed manual gearbox. This setup was like finding a needle in a haystack, making it the most sought-after Bandit-era Pontiac for enthusiasts. So, these cars weren't just movie stars, they were also proof of Pontiac's best efforts in a challenging era for performance vehicles. After the massive success of Smokey and the Bandit, which gathered in an amazing $300 million over the years, Pontiac was laughing all the way to the bank. Their investment in those 4 movie cars paid off big time. In 1978, thanks to the film's impact, a staggering 93,341 Trans Am sped out of dealerships. Quite the leap from the previous year's 68,745. And the trend didn't stop there. In 1979, Pontiac sold a whopping 117,108 Trans Ams, proving the Bandit effect was no fluke. When it came time to film the sequel, director Hal Needham knew he needed more of that Bandit magic. So Pontiac stepped up big time, delivering over twice the number of cars initially promised, this time in the form of 301 turbo models. But not everyone kept their promises. Burt Reynolds, who'd become the face of the Trans Am thanks to his role in the film, had been promised a Trans Am of his own if the movie did well. When he went to collect his prize, he found that the exec who made the promise had retired. The new management wasn't too keen on honoring the old deal, leaving Reynolds out in the cold. Even with its storied past, the car didn't make headlines as the inspiration for the iconic Bandit ride until well after the turn of the millennium. At some point, it traveled across the country and ended up at a dealership in Virginia, where it caught the eye of a mother and her son. They were on the hunt for one of the original movie cars, but as luck would have it, none of those had survived the filming. Determined, they set their sights on this particular Trans Am, drawn in by its rare 455 V8 engine, 4-speed manual transmission, and T-tops. Plus, its original condition and 45,000 miles on the odometer made it even more appealing. The car still boasted the snowflake wheels and other 1977 LE features, but the mother and son were unaware of its special backstory until they dug into the documentation provided by the Pontiac Historical Society. It was like finding a hidden treasure map. Once they uncovered the car's true heritage, they knew they had a gem on their hands. To preserve and enhance its legacy, they reached out to Rick Dieters of Trans Am Specialties in Miami. Rick and his team were tasked with giving the car a bit of a facelift, including a fresh paint job and reinstalling the 1977 front end. It was like restoring a classic painting to its former glory, ensuring that this piece of automotive history would continue to shine. After the restoration was wrapped up, the story took another twist. The shop received a call from the Burt Reynolds Institute, asking if they could showcase the car at a film festival in Key West. Burt Reynolds himself saw the car at the event and even signed a 1977 brochure, but he didn't yet grasp the full significance of this particular Trans Am. It wasn't until after the festival that Reynolds had his agent get in touch with Rick Dieters to dig deeper into the car's history. When Dieters confirmed that it was indeed the very same car from the brochure, Reynolds was over the moon. He was thrilled to have finally connected the dots and requested that the car be brought to his estate in Jupiter, Florida. Before he passed away, Reynolds made a video confirming that this car was the true inspiration behind Bandit's legendary Trans Am. If you're curious about its current status, this piece of automotive history is now insured for a whopping $1.5 million and is definitely not taking any wild jumps over the Mulberry Bridge anytime soon. It's safe and sound, preserving its iconic legacy for future generations to admire.